Hi everyone, Kashia here from Politely Rebellious. We really enjoyed recording series 1 and I wanted to just say hi and welcome to series 2 of the Being Politely Rebellious in Pompey video podcast. We have if it's even possible to say, we have another incredible lineup of individuals who are coming on to cement our stories in history, letting us in on their politely rebellious journeys that they've had throughout their lives and careers. As I mentioned on series 1, one of the really important things that we want to generate here is inspiration, inspiring others as to what you can achieve when you put your mind to it and you punch your way past the obstacles that can often be set out before us. So please enjoy series 2 as you have done series 1. Please remember to like, subscribe and share. Without that happening, we can't be here. So, like, subscribe and share. Enjoy the series.
It's because I've always wanted to have an impact.
Yeah.
That's why I became a teacher. I wanted to have an impact. That's why I became a police officer.
Yeah.
I wanted to have an impact. And I realised that in those large-scale roles, I can't have the impact that I want to have. I think the most politely rebellious thing that I have done is just following my own path.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like a real cop-out answer.
But no, it's like being true to yourself.
It's being true to myself. It is understanding what authentic means to me. Because that word is banded around. I don't want a mask today. I don't want to pretend today. This is who I am in all my glory.
Yeah.
If you don't like it, go away.
There's the door.
If you do, babe, there's a space for you.
Hi everyone and welcome to Being Politely Rebellious in Pompey. We are here with the wonderful Hannah Roper. Hi! Now Hannah Roper is not just any ordinary woman, she is on the Richter scale up here of extraordinary. Not only is she business owner of the Female Creative and Country on the Coast, she's also presenter at Express FM, non-exec director of Pomodzi Inspirational Women of Portsmouth Awards, and little secret for you, she's also a massive singer under the name of Lily Garland. Yeah. I love Lily Garland. I do
research, haven't you?
I've got some of Lily Garland's songs on my playlist on Spotify.
Amazing.
Because you write a lot of the songs as well, right?
Yeah, all of the ones that are on Spotify are ones that I've written myself or co-written, so they've all got my stamp on them.
And I love that you can look at Lily as, I know it's Hannah, but it's a separate part of you. It's like a inside perspective or inside look into like your heart and your soul, and
it is. I always used to describe Lily Garland as almost like Beyonce has Sasha, and I have Lily Garland.
Hannah has Lily.
And now Lily's got blonde hair, and I've got pink hair. So there's a
really
real
separation. I love that. Are you doing anything with Lily at the moment? Are you
no, people always ask me, and Lily Garland, when I look at Lily Garland as that chapter in my life, and the songs that I was writing, when you listen back to the lyrics, they were lyrics that I wrote when I was in a very different part of my life. And with those, there are some that I sit back and I listen to the songs and I'm like, I love them, and there are others where I'm like, that song's great, but I can't sing those lyrics anymore.
It doesn't relate to how you feel anymore about yourself or your situation. But what an amazing thing to have cemented kind of in history, really, for you to be able to look back on and look at it with hindsight kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Wasn't it? So where were you born, Hannah?
Born St Mary's, babes.
Were you?
I am Pompey born and bred.
I know she's on the Being Politely Rebellious in Pompey podcast, and we do aim to have those that are born and bred, but that's not always the case. I didn't realise that you were a born and bred.
Yeah, born and bred. So born at St Mary's, and I always think. So I was a police officer as one of my careers, And as a police officer, when you talk to people on the street, you're taking their details, one of the first things you say to them is, what's your date of birth and where were you born?
Yeah.
And you can tell a true Pompeian because their response is St Mary's. They don't say Portsmouth.
They say St Mary's.
Yeah.
And you're right, actually, because if I say to somebody, are you from Pompey? And they go, yeah, and I go, oh, what proper, like St Mary's, because it's QA now, isn't it?
Yes, yeah.
So the old school, the OGs. Down at St Mary's.
Yeah.
If you're born at QA, you probably won't understand half the stuff we're talking about, but come on in and subscribe anyway.
Yeah, that means we're a little bit older than maybe you thought we were. But yeah, born in St Mary's. My first house that I grew up in was in Cotner. We then moved to North End.
What secondary did you go to then?
Well, I went to secondary school out of the city, so we moved up to Waterlooville when I was 10, year 5.
Just in time for that
Just
transition.
my mum and dad wanted me to go to a Catholic secondary school.
Oh, did you go to Oakland?
And I went to Oakland.
Yes, lovely.
Yeah, so I moved up there.
One of my friends is going to view that for their son actually, soon, because my son and his friends are just entering year 6, so it's that crazy era of change.
Yes, and thinking about the next steps. But my son actually goes to Pembroke Park.
Oh, lovely.
Because it was his choice. That was the one he chose. And although I was brought up Catholic and I had my first Holy Communion, I was baptised, confirmation, all of that side of things, I made the choice to let Josh choose.
Oh, that's really good.
So as a result, there was never that kind of pressure to keep following through with him going to Catholic school.
Right.
He could just choose.
Is he musical at all?
He was.
he?
So and part of this is my influence. So when I started Lily Garland, Josh was about, was he 4? I think he was about 4 years old. And the reason I've always been musical, my mum put me on the stage when I was 5 years old. I was at the King's Theatre, so like count the King's Theatre as home in Southsea. It's like one of those places that as soon as I walk in, it just was so
comfy.
Yeah, it's just so much comfort, and it's beautiful, and there's so much history to it.
So much.
But I've always been musical. Had singing lessons. I was a dancer from the age of 2.5. Did all of that, drama, everything like that. At school, I was always in the musicals. From kind of year 9ish, I then took the lead parts in all of the musicals and that sort of thing. So I was really, really musical.
Is there any footage of this?
Wow,
I know you sent us some amazing pictures, which we'll share.
It was all, any footage that was there was on
VHS, yeah.
And because my grandfather had a video cam, which was...
Well, not quite this, right?
But you put the little tape in, and then you had to transfer from the little tape to the big tape, and then it was all on tape. So you've still got the tapes.
You used to be able to put the little tapes inside a big tape,
big
right?
tape,
And then whack it in the
and then it would play. And then you used to have to be really careful not to record over, so you'd have to take the little tab out to make sure that you couldn't record over it. So I did all of that, and I was really, really musical, and that was my passion. That was where I found joy the most.
Yeah.
When I then met kind of really the most serious relationship I'd ever had at that point, which is with Josh's father, all of that fell by the wayside. Yeah. I was also in the police at the time with shift work, and it's really difficult to keep up that sort of hobby. So I just walked away from the music completely. Not intentionally. I found myself in that situation.
Life takes over.
And then it was after I had left that relationship that I went back to songwriting and playing around in the studio and recording my own stuff, and then before I knew it, Lily Garland was born. But Josh would come with me, so he would travel to all my gigs. He would be backstage. He was a drummer. Absolutely fantastic drummer, and then football took over.
Football has a lot to answer for.
It does.
In lots of good ways, of course.
Yes.
And when did the police come into your life? Like, were you quite young? When did that happen?
From a very early age. So my grandfather was a police officer, and he was a detective back in the days when it was Portsmouth Police.
Wow.
And so I'd always had that influence. My uncle was also a police officer. He was also a detective. And it was always something that I wanted to do. I wanted to solve murders, basically.
Fascinated by it.
Really fascinated by it. I remember my grandparents, they moved out of Portsmouth. Interesting fun fact, when we moved to North End, what I think is interesting, we actually moved into the house that my grandparents used to live in, and then they moved out of the city. And they moved over to Winchester, which I consider really north.
In the country,
yeah.
In the countryside.
They moved out kind of Winchester, Shawford way, and they had this beautiful bungalow with a garden all the way around. And I used to take my grandfather's old-fashioned magnifying glass, and I would go and hunt for clues, and I'd read like little detective books and things like that.
And everyone encouraged that part of your personality.
Well, they did and they didn't. It was, I remember when I told my family that I was going to go into the police force, and it was, I'd already begun my career as a teacher. So I'd gone through university, done music.
Women who's done 100,000, and you're not. How old are you, Hannah?
42 or 43 at the end of this year.
And she's lived 1,000 people's lifetimes as far as the employment record is concerned. It's incredible. But you've never. It's not like you've like dipped into something and dipped out 6 months later. Like from what I know about you so far, you've gone into something, given it your everything, and then gone, right, I'm ready for a new challenge now, which is just mind blowing.
Or this is not what I wanted when I went into teaching, and especially being a musician. There's kind of really two paths to choose. There's the performance path, and then there's the teaching path. And the performance, I've always been somebody who has needed that element of stability. I've always needed to be near home. Even for university, I only went as far as Chichester. So I never really wanted to be too far away from home. And so as a result, I went down that route with teaching. I was a secondary school teacher, music teacher, realised that children don't have a passion for music, and the curriculum and the way that we teach music and still teach music
that's crazy, isn't it?
Is not the way it should be done. So I then went into primary school and I got my PGCE in primary education. And then I realised that being stuck with the same group of children day in, day out was a bit painful. And I was teaching subject. You have to become an expert in this wide variety of subjects. Although I pride myself in that I managed to escape teaching science the entire time, pretty much. That always used to be when I had like the cover teacher in for me to go and do my planning and my prep, always during science. And so that was the path that I was on. But when I realised that wasn't for me, I was really unhappy, and I actually kind of got made redundant. I guess the school went into financial difficulties. I was the last in, therefore I was first out, and I saw it as an opportunity to go, well, actually, I've got a teaching qualification, I've got the backup plan, I'm going to try this now, and I'm going to go into the police. But my dad wasn't overly thrilled.
Did he serve his whole career in the police force?
No, so my dad is nothing to do with police.
Oh, sorry, it was your granddad.
So my granddad
and
my uncle. So they, absolutely, they were career police officers, very well known in Hampshire and Portsmouth police as it was back then. My dad was in retail. He worked at what was Knighton Lee down in Southsea, and he started, and I can't remember exactly how old, I would say around the age of 16 he got his first job, and he worked his way up into then kind of senior leadership within the store. But then he took a different turn. He got into his 40s and he decided that he wanted a different career path, and he became a university lecturer at Portsmouth University. He did a degree later in life, so did my mum. They didn't do that when they were younger. My mum missed a lot of school. She went to Portsmouth High School. My dad went to the same like kind of junior school, infant school, which is Corpus Christi. So we both went there, obviously not at the same time. And then he went to St John's. So my family are very much Pompey, born and bred. But both of them educated themselves later in life. Both of them got degrees later on in life. My dad has got a master's as well. I think my mum's got a master. Anyway, they've both done incredible things. And I didn't realise until probably in my late 30s that I realised how much the influence of seeing them do different things. My mum she started in catering college. She met my dad working in retail. She then went into kind of education, further education sector. She now works for Hampshire Police as well, in kind of the learning and development
So
team.
you've seen that change, and you've seen them go, right, I'm not entirely happy with this, so I'm going to switch it up a little bit. And so that must have given you the confidence, even if it was subconsciously, to go, okay, I can change. And I think that is one of the beautiful things of our generation, right?
Yes.
And as you said, your parents' generation, where maybe before that people would just go and work on the railways and that would be it for the rest of their lives, or they'd be a baker for the rest of their life, or an engineer whereas you do have such great access now to learning and employment and whatnot. So then how long were you in the police force for?
I was in the police for 13 years.
Wow. In Pompey?
So I was Havantly Park, Waterlooville. So I did my first into training was in Winchester.
Right.
Then I was Havantly Park and Waterlooville, Hayling Island, that sort of area. Then I had my son, and then I moved over to what was then the prisoner interview team, Fareham, Gosport, but we covered Havant, Waterlooville, Lee Park, all of that.
Did you find at any point, did you get to a stage where it was similar to your primary school experience, where
hugely
you were seeing the same 30 faces all the time?
And also, you especially drunks,
get to know people.
You speak to drunks in the same way that you would speak to an unruly primary school class. So there were so many things that I learned as a teacher, and I spent time as well, before I fully qualified as a teacher, I spent 2 summers in New York, in upstate New York, teaching underprivileged children from the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and they were funded. It was what you used to call like the Fresh Air Fund.
Right.
So basically, people would sponsor underprivileged children, and they would then go to summer camp for 4
Very
weeks.
Michelle Pfeiffer.
So you say that.
Is it Gangster's Paradise? What's the movie called?
Dangerous Minds.
Dangerous Minds.
That's why I wanted to be a teacher.
That's it now. From now on, Michelle's your name.
That was my inspiration for being a teacher.
Did you incorporate music in any way, shape, or form when you were there?
When I was in New York, they used to refer to me as the White Alicia Keys.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, so it was such an eye opener for me, because for the first time in my life, I was the minority.
Yeah.
And I was being judged because I had blonde hair, blue eyes. I was pretty, but I don't really. This is as tanned as I get.
Yeah.
And it was everything that I'd known flipped on its head.
Yeah.
And
That's so interesting.
People took me for who I was in that moment. Nobody knew me from before. Nobody knew me through school, through university, whatever it was. I was kind of judged, and we had situations where, like, for example, we had to give a death message to a 16-year-old boy that we had in our care because his cousin was killed in a drive-by shooting whilst he was in summer camp. So there's me, and I may have grown up in Portsmouth, but I was privileged, hugely privileged in comparison to this experience of these children. And that was the making of me. And that's why I wanted to go into teaching, because I wanted to be able to make a difference. But unfortunately, the education system that we're in doesn't allow you as a teacher.
It's not got that. I've been speaking to
it's like
the women who now
converted.
homeschools. And it's funny because when you were saying about music, so I think I've probably mentioned this before, so sorry if I'm boring you, but my son is an amazing musician, and he plays the drums and he plays the guitar and he self-teaches the piano, and if he doesn't go on to be a musician in some way, shape or form, I'll be mind blown. But I remember that transition from infant school to junior school, and the thing that kept him going was that in the junior school they had a music room, so they had a room dedicated to music, and so he was so excited. And then when he got there to year 3 and they were tapping, tambourines and doing the triangle, he was just like, "Mummy, what is this? Like, what? I've waited 3 years for this. What?" And then that's when we made the decision, a year later, that actually for him, he wants to do drums 4 hours a day and English 1 hour a day, not the other way around. And that's okay. But I mean, that autonomy, I think it needs to be fired into the education system, doesn't it? I mean, we should probably talk about that for hours. we won't bore you about humans, but
the overhaul of the education system.
I know. If only, if we were in power.
I know. Well, gosh, the world look out if that was the case.
Imagine.
Yeah.
So police force. So then you've done that for 13 years. That's a long old time, isn't it? So you had a little bubby.
Yes, I had my bubby.
Are you on shift work?
I was on shift work. I wasn't technically then on the street when he was younger, because it's amazing when you then have your own child. And when I look back now to the situations that I was involved in, you know, there's a couple, and I quite often use some of these stories and I drop them into conversation when I know I need to get people's attention. And I did it, oh my gosh, where was I? Oh, that was it. Yesterday I was at work and I was doing a Young Women in STEM event. Because now I work for a huge aviation company, National Air Traffic Services, and we had and we had some young women in to talk about careers in STEM, and it was, the whole theme was no wrong path, which I'm totally here for. There is no wrong path. And I dropped one of these stories in, and just their faces, the way they just look at me, because I'm quite small. I'm 5'3", probably slightly less, but we round it up. But I remember a couple of occasions. So, you know, one, I was right in the middle of Lee Park in an empty space. I was single crewed. I was on my own. And I had been sent to break up a fight between two men that were going at each other. And by the time I got there, they were absolutely like kicking 10 bells out of each other. Neither of them were small. And I have that vivid memory of kind of literally squeezing myself in between the middle of them, pushing them out to the side, having one on one palm and one on the other palm as I'm trying to reason with them. Their punches swinging over my head. They could have had weapons, and I couldn't let go of either of them to then radio or press my emergency button or do anything.
Vulnerable.
So I had to, and that's why I can talk my way out of any situation. And then another story, which I think is always entertaining, is basically me wrestling with a half-naked man in the KFC car park over at Havant. As you do, and having to use my entire body weight to keep him pinned to the ground because I don't have the strength in my arms. So people don't see that, and I realised when I had a son I couldn't put myself in those situations anymore. When I was very, very newly pregnant and I didn't want to tell anybody, because that's what's drummed into us. Don't tell anyone until the 12-week mark. Exactly. But I was at QA Hospital dealing with a young lady who had a severe mental health breakdown. Yeah. She was so violent and she kicked me across this hospital room. And that's when I thought, I can't, I'm not invincible anymore. When you've got another life that you're looking after, you know you're not invincible. So I went into the prisoner interview team and I loved that. So that's like more on the detective. I spent all my time in custody interview, and that's when I saw the repeat customers, as we used to say, come round and round again. The school children, and then I moved more into an investigative space, and I was at fair.
So did you get to work on murder cases in the end?
No. So murder cases are done by kind of like the
CID,
major crime. So not even really what used to be CID. It's a major crime, and for major crime, people had to retire pretty much for there to become a space for you to go in. And
which is interesting, because I know that obviously with experience or time comes that experience, but at the same time you think that they would freshen it up like more often.
And maybe now they do. I mean, I'm 6 years out of it now.
Only 6 years?
Only 6 years since I left the police.
That's not long, is it?
It feels like a life. Again, it's another chapter in my life. It feels like a lifetime ago. I think a lot of it, I found that the roles, I didn't want to go back out on the street. Money was tight. A lot of the kind of subsidiary departments were being shut down. Everyone was being put out onto operational responding. I knew that I didn't want to do that. I'd managed to still utilise my teaching qualifications. So although I technically left teaching behind, I went into the training department and I was training existing police officers with new things. So it's very similar to primary school in that I was having to learn a new topic and be an expert in a topic and then to be able to deliver that. And that was from the new coercive control legislation that came into modern day slavery, to child sexual exploitation, to then really boring legal changes. So I've really developed my skills and my adaptability to go, right, I'm now an expert here.
And how do you feel seeing recently, like with the rioting and the protesting, and I mean, for example, yesterday I remember seeing a picture of all the police officers like stood as one, and they just, I think it's such a beautiful sight when you see, obviously the reasons for them being there are not beautiful, but when you see like 50, 100 police officers stood in a line all as one, like they look like they're one, no matter, you know, what age they are, what race they are, where they're from, whatever. It's, this is my teammate. And were you ever in those types of situations as a police officer?
Not to that scale, but as a shift, we were very, very close. We had a fantastic sergeant, and there were times when we all went out en masse. And those people know, they know you better than your spouse knows you or your partner knows you. And I was chatting yesterday actually to an air traffic controller, and I think that's why I made the switch between the police and aviation quite seamlessly, because where air traffic controllers work shifts, they see each other at all times of the day, they see each other at their best, they see each other at their worst, and they have to support each other. And that's a very different type of relationship. It's a very intense relationship.
I mean, I would imagine that you have to be able to understand each other's facial expressions, and if you're uncomfortable, if you're, you know, getting riled, you know, so as you can help each other, words unspoken, kind of thing.
And just be able to know when to step in, when somebody's happy dealing with it by themselves, or when you know that situation's about to escalate, and you just have to sense that is the right thing to do. And that's I've never then really experienced that
in any other sector that you've worked in.
In any other.
So you're now, as we explained, the legend that is working now in the aviation sector.
Yes.
But also, you have, in the last 6 years, launched Female Creative. Country on the Coast.
Yes.
Become a presenter at Express FM.
Yes.
Non-exec director at Pomodzi.
Yeah.
Am I missing anything? Obviously, Lily Garland. Go and check her out on Spotify.
Is there anything else I do? I don't think so.
That's just crazy though, isn't it? Don't add anything. Except being here today.
Well,
don't add too much.
You say that. There's there's something brewing, and I think that's one of the things that I'm really, really passionate about, is showing people that it doesn't matter where you come from. Everything you do creates skills, and at any point, if you want to pivot because you have a passion for something, pivot and do it. Now, there of course has to be some boundaries to that,
as far as your capacity and your mental health and stuff.
Exactly that. And I juggle. I do describe myself as the queen of juggle. I don't always get it right. There are days when I sit there and I have a little cry to myself and I think, what am I doing? Why do I make life so difficult for myself? But it's because I've always wanted to have an impact. That's why I became a teacher. I wanted to have an impact. That's why I became a police officer. I wanted to have an impact. And I realised that in those large scale roles, I can't have the impact that I want to have. So
you're not as close, or you don't have as much autonomy as you'd like to with the people, basically.
With the people, with the situation, what I do day by day.
So where are you with the Female Creative? So the Female Creative was, you launched that during COVID, didn't you?
I did, yes.
Brave woman, tell me.
Brave or stupid, I'm not entirely sure.
It's what makes it incredible.
So I, at that point when just before COVID had struck, I thought life was perfect. I just recently remarried. We'd moved into a new house. I had this new job in the aviation sector that was paying me more money than I could have ever dreamed of in the police and working in the public sector. I was loving what I was doing. I was gigging as Lily Garland, and I had recently, we just had the first successful year of Country on the Coast Festival. So things were great. And then COVID struck and we got shut in our houses. And what that did to me was, unleashed, opened Pandora's box of a lot of previous trauma and issues that I had had throughout my life, culminated with not being able to do the things that I wanted to do, feeling isolated. My husband is also a police officer, so he was still going to work during that time. I was at home with my son and my stepdaughter. I was homeschooling. I felt so alone. I felt completely isolated, and because of things that I've experienced before around coercive controlling behaviour, I'd been in a very toxic relationship. I didn't know who I was. I came out of that relationship not having any
identity.
No, exactly that. No identity. I describe it as
which is
existing.
Which is phenomenal, because you are so identifiable now. Like, as we know you, whether that's on socials or in person, like, you couldn't walk down the street and not recognise Hannah, you know.
But I still think people don't know who I am.
No, so they do, and if they don't, you do now. But yeah, like I couldn't picture you being that person, but that's such a common thing. And a common theme amongst women, especially of our generation, where they just are in some kind of toxic relationship, the coercive control element, and they lose all sense of identity.
Yes.
And so the female creative was you coming out more so, or helping other people to find that identity.
Yes, and I didn't realise at the time, because having then the news telling you had to stay inside, you could only go out for an hour a day, I felt so controlled.
All over again.
And I had to do something to take that control back. And just before COVID hit, I was in a situation with somebody, I was having a conversation, and I was talking about creativity. And this then kind of makes sense as to why I became the female creative, because I thought my creativity was completely and utterly tied up in Lily Garland.
Right.
That outside of that brand that I created, which came with its own merch line and all of that, a website, brand, everything like that. That outside of that, I had no creative ability. And somebody sat me down and said, no, you are creative. You don't have to be a painter, you don't have to be an artist, you don't have to be a poet, but you are creative. You're creative in the way that you think, creative in the way that you solve problems. And I think taking that and having that little seed planted in my head just before COVID, I was then part of an online community with a lot of creative women who had creative hobbies that they wanted to monetize, which a lot of people did during COVID, because we had that opportunity. We had the time, and B, we had everybody online, and they weren't spending their money on anything else.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was with this kind of community of women, but what I realised is they were struggling with their branding, they were struggling with their visual identities, they were struggling with how to market their business, they were struggling with how to use social media. And I started saying, but that's easy. You just do this bit like this, or you do this bit like that. And I realised that what I was offering was something that I could then create in a structure and as a business, with the view of what could that lead to? Could that take me away from the corporate world at some point? What does that look like? Is this going to be just a COVID thing? Could be. I could keep whatever.
Yeah, but let's pivot and take the lead.
Take action.
What happens?
Take action and see where we go. So I started offering up my services, and before I knew it, I was working more hours than I was working in my corporate role.
Yeah, that's crazy, isn't it?
Whilst homeschooling. And it was a fantastic learning point, and I invested in a coach, and she got me to see, actually I need to increase my prices, and this is how I could simplify what I was offering. Because so often when you're right in the middle of it,
you don't see the flaws, do you?
No, you don't. You just constant
go.
So that was a real game changer for me, and that's when I realised that I have an ability, and I've done it in every day job that I've done. I do it with every creative business owner that I work with, and now also a bit more in the country music space, is I can look at a situation and I can assimilate information really, really quickly and make sense of it all. And when people say that they're struggling with X, Y, and Z, I can say, well that's because
here's the solution.
That's why, and here are then your options that you can then choose to move forward. So I started doing that with the Female Creative, and because I don't do anything by halves, that then came with a podcast, it came with a networking brunch.
When is the next one actually?
October.
I've been to one, and I was an anxiety-induced mess when I first walked in. I was just like, if I hadn't have met with you before, I probably wouldn't have gone. But it was such a good event.
It's
so good, yeah.
And they are, again, that was something. I have a gift for creating spaces for people, but I wanted to create a space that didn't come with a hefty price tag or
Yeah,
didn't
and
come with
also
a pressure.
where it's comfortable.
Yes.
Like, I think when you think of networking events, I personally I suppose not as much now as maybe in the past, but you do still picture like middle-aged white dudes in suits.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And handing over business cards
Yes.
and talking about, you know, KPIs and profit and loss.
And just
Whereas-
pitching all the time.
Yeah, pitching. Watch what elevator pitch.
Yeah.
Whereas it's not that. It is that, but it's not that.
Yeah.
You know, like you do get to know everybody and you get to know what they do and a bit about their journey. And
It's about connection.
100%.
Yeah.
And I mean, you definitely come away learning something new. So keep an eye out for that October.
Yes.
And you can get tickets.
Tickets
via
are
the website.
Yeah, tickets are on sale now. They're all on the website, so it's accessible.
Country on the Coast came before the female creative.
Yes.
And so you obviously that's been and gone this year, right?
Yeah, back in
been
April.
and done. Well done.
Yeah.
And what does that look like for 2025?
Excitement.
Yeah.
We are back for 2025. I've sent all the branding over to get the ticket website kind of up and running. Just about to open applications. I've got a few people that kind of I've spoken to already in terms of traders to get these incredible small businesses that just make the best country music stuff.
Yeah.
Whether it be stationery, hats,
Because
or
it isn't
whatever.
just the music, is
No.
it? It's the whole vibe.
It's the whole vibe. I say we bring the outside in, and we connect the country with the coast.
Yeah.
And it creates its own special vibe. And it was all born out of a real selfishness because I was so fed up of travelling to all of these gigs. So much happens in the Midlands and up north with country music in the UK, and nothing was happening below London.
So you were like, right,
I was
take this
like,
into my hands.
Yep.
I shall pivot.
I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to
Yeah.
create my own. And we started off as a 3-day country music festival, and for 3 years we were 3 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We had a bit of a bad year, and interestingly, not the first year after COVID, but 2023, I think it was. The financial situation within the country was affecting everybody. Live music events were hugely affected. A lot of festivals were closing down. We had a really quiet year, and it was really worrying because I thought, well, there's so many people that want this.
Yeah.
So what do we do?
You need to have the numbers to go
We need to
ahead,
have the
right?
numbers. It's got to be financially viable.
Yeah.
It's got to make a profit. We've got to pay the artists. Otherwise, it's not sitting with the values and the ethos of what we're trying to create. So we brought it down to 2 days, and for 2024 we did 2 days, and it was phenomenal. I've also had various points in my life where I wonder, what am I doing and why am I doing this? And just before this year's Country on the Coast, I had one of those moments.
Right.
So what people see is this incredible 2-day country festival where we sold so many tickets. The kitchen ran out of food. It was so busy. The artists were incredible.
And it's down at the gate.
Down at the Gaiety on South Parade Pier. The weather was insane. But what people didn't see is about a month before that, if somebody had given me the option to cancel it, I would have done.
Really?
I couldn't do it anymore. It was too much pressure. I tried to assemble a team, but sometimes it's more work mentally to bring other people on board and manage
100%.
people than just do it yourself.
Absolutely.
I'd recently moved house. I say the summer before we'd moved house, but we'd ended up living in a hotel for 4 weeks as a family of 4 because of the way that the house sale had not overlapped, and it was horrendous. And I'd again, when I go through periods like that, it unearths things that maybe I hadn't dealt with
in the
before.
past, things that are locked down inside.
Yes.
How did you then get past that?
Therapy.
Yeah. Is that something you do regularly regardless, or?
No, it's something I pick up and put down when I
Yeah.
need it. So after I left my toxic relationship where I was subjected to coercive control, I had quite intense therapy and counselling for about 18 months, and that gave me the strength to leave the police. There was a whole lot of trauma tied up with being in the police as well. So that kind of gave me the courage to do that, to date again, to meet somebody else, and that side of things. And then after during lockdown, I actually went back because it had unearthed so many things that I knew that I had to work through. My anxiety was through the roof. I just couldn't function and I couldn't process day to day. But when you're a parent, you've got no choice.
You've got no choice, absolutely. And I think with that, the lack of routine that, you know, took place with COVID, and I know you've been quite vocal in some respects about mental health and ADHD, and so it's understanding, I guess, as outsiders, that having a routine when you have any kind of mental health issues, or if maybe you are diagnosed with ADHD or similar, having routine is key, right?
Hugely.
And actually I think that people don't realise that. They don't realise that having structure, and once that penny drops and you realise this, your, you know, anything that's troubling you or has been troubling you does become easier.
Yes, it does.
So I'm sure that must have had a huge impact on you during COVID.
Hugely.
Everything was just like stripped away, right?
Yeah, and I was left with my own thoughts a lot of the time. I didn't know I had ADHD at that point.
Yeah.
So, as with a lot of women,
You made it harder, right?
Yeah, my brain was on
And you don't know why.
a million miles an hour. My husband didn't really understand why I was anxious, why I was feeling the way that I was feeling, because as far as he was concerned, I was getting paid for staying at home and doing nothing. Whereas for me, that's my worst, nightmare.
Yeah.
Which is why I started the Female Creative, to enable myself to have some structure throughout the day, to have a purpose. So I do dip in and out of counselling throughout my life. If I feel I'm not coping, then I will go and seek some level of professional help.
Do you tend to use the same therapist, or?
I did for quite a long time. Now I feel that I am past a certain point with a lot of my trauma and my trauma responses. I've got the tools in my toolbox. More recently,
remembering to use them sometimes, right?
Remembering that the toolbox is there. I've left it behind somewhere. I've then kind of had some kind of more mental health coaching and some mindset coaching as well, which has really helped. Again, it's the tools. I will never not suffer from anxiety. I will never not doubt myself. I will always have sometimes physical but very much emotional reactions to a trigger from something that's happened to me. But I now know, to me, the strength is going, well, I recognise that. Here's one of my tools. And now I'm going to move on, and I'm going to continue living.
And you've got really supportive parents as well, haven't you? Really
My parents have been incredible. Yes, my mum is my number one fan. I most recently had her as camera woman when we went and interviewed some country artists at a country festival the other weekend. My dad has been such a huge influence for me. He's been my constant, and he's taught me so many things, and so many things that are little phrases. And it's only being an adult, because as a child I was very fearful of my dad. He came from a very disciplined place. That when he was at school, the discipline was nothing that we would ever dream of inflicting on our children. So there's a whole host of trauma there, I think, from almost my parents' generation
trauma,
that as we know now passes through physically from one generation to another. But he's always been that person that it doesn't matter what's going on, I know that I can go to him, I know that I can trust him, and he's given me so many pearls of wisdom that I now live my life by, and especially my clients will hear me kind of quote them so often. But I think that's why I have that confidence to change path now, because he's always taught me, you make a decision in good faith and you live with the consequences. You don't beat yourself up for those. I went into a relationship, I made a decision based on good faith, and that relationship turned out to almost be the destroying of me.
Or could have been.
But I dealt with the consequences and I moved on. When I decided that I wasn't in the right job, I don't beat myself up for going into the police. I don't beat myself up for training as a teacher. And
like, that's part of your journey. That's part of
my
your
journey.
Experience.
Now the information I have in front of me is different. Now I can make a different decision and I can follow another path. So I think all of that's been very, very, very influential. But as with most of us, we don't appreciate things until we're a bit
Yes,
older.
hindsight's a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
right? Absolutely. But to have that support's phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I have seen you, I haven't obviously met your dad, but I've seen you and your mum in action together, and it is beautiful to see, absolutely stunning. What would you say is the most politely rebellious thing you've ever done?
Oh my gosh.
I feel like you could give us a list of like 20, but if you could pick just one.
This is really, because I've been thinking about this is really hard. I think the most politely rebellious thing that I have done is just following my own path.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds like a real cop-out answer.
But no, it's like being true to yourself.
It's being true to myself. It is understanding what authentic means to me, because that word is banded around
100%.
so much.
Yeah.
And as a result, for a long time I didn't use it. And then I thought, no, I'm going to claim back power over that word. To me, being authentic is realising that I'm not always going to get it right. I'm also going to be in situations where people don't like me. And I get that a lot in the corporate world. I have a real skill at being able to inadvertently reflect things back to people that they
Look in the mirror, dear. Look in the mirror.
that they then don't like. I've got this saying, you know, in fact, it's not even mine. I saw it somewhere, and it's always about, you know, don't match the energy, raise the energy. Sometimes I get goddamn tired of raising the energy. When I match the energy, people don't like what they say.
Because they're so used to you being the one.
Yes. That will change that vibe, will change that situation.
I could imagine you being the type of person who, and I'm quite similar, and I remember someone saying to me once, I remember it was when I was working my way up through management before I started my own businesses, and one of the directors saying to me, you need to understand the effect that you have when you walk into a room. So I was expected to raise the energy all the time. And if I was having a bad day, or if I was like, you know, didn't have the capacity to do that in that moment, well, that was really
almost the world ends. And I think that's what I've
it's
found.
a lot of pressure.
It's a lot of pressure, and it's a lot of expectation.
Kind of created the monster, though, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think I guess that is understanding that as well, and knowing. So I pride myself in, I will never ever start a negative situation, but you better believe I'm going to finish it. You know,
you can take the girl out of Pompey, but you can't take the Pompey out of the girl.
And that's I think that's where I am politely rebellious, in that I know I have this superpower, and I did recently did another podcast interview where we were talking about the ADHD, and it was about being really raw and really vulnerable as a leader. And I said, ADHD, everyone talks about it as a superpower. We know that there are some huge negatives to having ADHD. There is a debilitating anxiety. There is depression that is associated. This week, my poor family have had to scrap and scrape around for meals because my executive dysfunction has meant I can't even entertain the idea of doing the food shopping. It's like, you're all old enough, figure it out.
Have a sandwich.
Exactly, that's what my son had for dinner last night. And so people don't see that side of things. However, on the flip side of it, I know that I do have a bit of a superpower to be able to change the energy, to be able to influence, to be able to deal with conflict. I never go looking for conflict, but if I'm plonked in the middle of it, and that's what I joke, say I never start anything, but I will finish it. I will take control of that situation. And as a result, people don't always like that. And I think that's me being politely rebellious. I mean, I hate that phrase, like, with all due respect, because you know that nothing respectful is going to finish that. But I think actually politely rebellious is the better way to describe that situation of, this is me, this is what you're going to get. And although I can adapt and I can flex, and this is the years of masking, I can mould myself into any situation. Being politely rebellious is going, actually, I don't want to mask today. I don't want to pretend today. This is who I am in all my glory. If you don't like it, go away.
There's the door.
If you do, babe, there's a space for you here. And that is a constant journey that I am only really in the last 12 to 18 months have confidently
embraced.
Embrace that.
kind of accepted it for what it is.
And know that not everyone's always going to like you.
And that's okay, isn't it? That's okay.
Not when you've got ADHD and
no,
you have to please everyone.
It's hard, but I totally get that. You're not going to be everyone's cup of tea, and you know that just is what it is. And I think more often than not, it says more about those people than it does about you. You know, so
it does. And on the flip side, whenever I have reacted negatively to somebody else or somebody else's energy, now it's about looking inwardly and saying, well, actually, is that saying something about me? Am I being triggered with something? Sometimes people are just not.
Yeah. But
their
sometimes
energy is
it's not intentional.
Yes, yeah,
and
exactly.
It's like you say, it's because of something deep rooted within you that maybe you need to work on.
Yeah.
But again, like that's just such a beautiful space to be in your life, where you can just look inward and be like, oh, okay, I'll own that one.
Yeah,
I might not tell you, but inside,
I'm not going to tell anyone.
Inside, I'm talking to myself about it. All right.
I mean, as my husband knows, I'm never wrong.
Yeah. Let's go to something new that we're doing. So don't be scared.
Okay, I'm now terrified.
So we're just going to hit you with some quick fire questions.
Okay. Oh, I love this.
Yes. So, Quorn or Linda McCartney?
Oh, Quorn, but actually in reality neither, because they've got gluten in them and I'm gluten free.
There you go. And they don't have gluten-free options.
Yes, some shops do, and the supermarkets are now better at making non-meat products that are gluten-free.
That's crazy, isn't it? So you're vegetarian, right? Not vegan.
I'm not vegan, and occasionally I will eat gluten-free fish fingers because I've realised I can't live without them.
Right, okay, fair enough. Good old, I was going to say fish finger sandwich, but would that work?
Gluten-free,
does it work?
It
with
does.
Gluten-free bread?
It does.
If you toast the bread a little bit?
Oh,
yeah.
Speaking my language.
So neither. So Quorn and Linda McCartney, you kind of need to step it up a little bit with your gluten-free range.
Exactly.
In, what's the word? Inclusive.
Yes.
More
inclusive of us celiac peeps.
Yes. Train or plane?
Train.
Yeah.
And I work in the world of aviation.
You do?
I do. The reason is because better scenery.
Fair enough. Fair enough. You can actually see the animals.
Yes.
Yeah.
And the grass and the trees.
Where would you say is the best place that you've ever travelled to by a train?
I travelled up to Liverpool, was the longest journey that I've done.
Oh, really?
And that was
from
cool.
Portsmouth?
From Portsmouth. So Portsmouth to Waterloo, over to King's Cross, and then up to Liverpool, Lime Street. It took 6-7 hours.
Oh, that's not as bad as you think.
And because the journey is broken up, my brain thinks it's shorter. But as the train, and at some points the train's going too fast, but I do love looking out the train window and seeing all of the farmers' fields, and then the next bit of town, and then the buildings, and
Do you know what I always think in those situations? Because I do love a train. I mean, I love a plane just because of the destination that I'm going to. But when it comes to trains, I always find myself thinking, look at all this open land.
Yes.
What do they mean there's nowhere to build new houses? Like, it blows my mind a little bit. I'm just like, we probably built on this much in the grand scheme of things.
There's so much. It's when you go in situations like that that you realise there's so much more to the UK.
Yeah, 100%.
I think we take it for granted.
I'd love to do that train ride. You know, it probably costs thousands of pounds. The one where you have dinner.
Oh, yes.
And it's like white glove service.
Yes.
You know,
had like proper sit down
silver,
meal.
you know, all the stuff. like you're back in the day, and you can even sleep, but it's like
some of those like old Western movies that you see where they're all of the rich people.
What's it called? There's one in
Is it the Orient Express?
I think that's it.
Yeah.
I'd love to do that one day.
Although then my overthinking brain starts to then think, well, how do they keep everything on the table when it's like
When
going
it's
really
moving.
fast? And how do people not spill things? Anyway.
Maybe it's like at a particular speed. It doesn't go past.
It's got to be a slow train.
And maybe it's like a path that's made just for that train.
Yes,
or something. No
so
through
nice
trains.
nice
paths.
and smooth.
Nice and smooth.
Yeah.
Now I feel like this is a silly question, to be honest, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Pink or purple?
Oh, pink.
It's like,
do you know, purple is my least favourite colour.
Really?
Yeah.
It's my favourite.
Yeah, it's my mum's favourite. Well, that and kind of the turquoise colour.
Yeah.
But purple is my least favourite colour.
Wow. And pink for you has been like a huge part of when we were talking about all identity and
Yes.
authenticity,
Yeah.
and you stepping into the Hannah Roper that you are today.
Yeah.
And how did that come? What do you remember the day that you woke up and went, pink's going to be mine, I'm going to own that?
It was when I launched The Female Creative, and I was very much looking into colour psychology, and I was influenced by kind of some other brands that were out there as well that had a similar colouring, but also then other brands that really intentionally chose their colouring. And because I was rebelling so much against the corporate, being a business coach, the navy blue, that side of things. I was like, and the pink for the femininity, and I'd had some kind of sessions. They don't even kind of know what you would call people, but those that they just look deep into your soul and they tell you things, and you're like, oh my god, how did you even know that about me? And don't mean like a psychic. I mean just those really intuitive, spiritual people
who can tell you what colour your aura is.
Yeah, exactly that. And I discovered that because of their being in the police and then also like being within the aviation industry, it's very, very male dominated. So I very often sit in my male masculine energy. So claiming the pink was me going, right, I know I need to sit in my more feminine energy. I don't know how to do that yet, but let's kind of grab hold of incorporate that in. Yeah.
And how beautiful is that? That's amazing.
So it's very intentional.
No, I love it. I love it. I couldn't imagine you without the pink.
I know,
as part of the brand.
It's been 2 years I've had light pink hair, or just over 2 years now.
No, you put it off really, really well.
Thank
It's
you.
lovely. It's beautiful.
It's not bad for a 42-year-old.
No, babe, you're doing all right. Running or the gym?
The gym.
Yeah. Are you an avid gym goer?
I wouldn't say avid. I would say having a 14-year-old son who is heavily into his fitness.
Okay.
And saying, Mum, I need to take you to the gym.
Okay.
So I do go to the gym. I'm very stop-started with the gym. I won't go for months and then I'll get back into it. You know, it's that situation of like, oh, goddamn gym, goddamn mental health, damn it,
Why are you so correct?
But I've just started swimming again. For years, I haven't swum in a public swimming pool because it was just too cold. And I get sensory overload with the ADHD, and I hate the feeling of being wet. However, for whatever reason, my brain has now suddenly decided that is acceptable. Running, I've tried. I just don't enjoy it.
No, I'm not a runner. I must say, I wish I was.
Yes.
Because that feeling of being free and having your music, but to be honest, I think with me it is the anxiety. Like I always just think I'm going to be that woman out running across the top of the hill that gets murdered.
Yes, fair enough. To be fair, my brain hadn't gone there, but yes, no, I can understand that.
Call on Hannah Roper to investigate. If you see me out running, please don't kill me. Bath or shower?
Shower.
Really?
Yes. Yeah, every now and again I'll have a bath, and only because I'll have a Mama Bee bath bomb.
Right, they are.
So, which is just
absolute creme de la creme, aren't they?
Creme de la creme.
Yeah.
And that's the only time I have a bath. But as soon as I get in the bath, I'm like,
I want to get out now.
I want to get out now. This is wasting my time. Honestly, you should have seen me sat in the jacuzzi at the gym the other day, where I can't be on my phone, and I'm sat there and I'm like, this is a waste of time. I could be doing this. What could I be? Oh, how was it? And just my brain is all over the place. So showers are intentional. I can wash myself and do my hair, crack on.
It's got a purpose.
Yes.
It's got a beginning and an end.
Exactly. There's no sitting there doing nothing.
Yes, no, I completely agree. What do you tend to do for your mental health then? So if you're not someone that, necessarily likes to lounge around in water of any kind, and I know you've said obviously about therapy.
Yeah.
But do you have days maybe where you just kind of switch off from the technology and stuff like that?
Yeah, my go-to, and it's taken a while for my husband to understand, is I will get lost in a fictional box set.
Okay.
So at the moment it's Yellowstone.
Oh, okay. Which is that Kevin Costner?
It is, and the country sound. I mean, I want to live on a ranch in Montana. In that simple life where there's no technology, that escapism. I love the coast, and being a Pompey girl, we've always been near the sea. I've come to realise that the water that I love is rivers.
Oh wow!
Fresh water, not salt water. I love looking at the sea. I love the sound of the sea. I love being by the sea, but I love that fresh water. So for me, if I'm really, really struggling, you'll find me on the top of Portsdown Hill, looking out over the water near the horses. There's lots of horses fields up there. I was an avid horse rider as a teen and would spend every Saturday morning in the stables mucking out. There was no job too dirty. I just loved being around them. But yeah, getting lost in a box set and just being transported to that land, and I will go from episode to episode to episode to episode.
Immerse yourself in it, literally.
But I will then know when enough is enough,
right? And
I'll break away, and I have to be trusted. If you try and break me away before I'm ready, all hell will break loose. So that's kind of my relaxation, and then just being out in nature. If I really am struggling, that's when I do go and find peace. I've got 2 dogs, so walking them now every day has been a game changer, and it's partly why we got 1 dog initially, and then because I don't do anything by halves, we decided to get another one.
You've kind of got to have that insurance policy though, haven't you?
Yeah, and they need each other as well. They're both special. They need each other. But I think that's been a real game changer for my mental health because, and this is very classic, I think, with ADHD as well. You're not very good at looking after yourself, but as soon as you have a purpose to look after something or someone,
100%.
So by having a dog, I would never have gone out for a walk on my own. I've tried so many times, but to me it's a waste. I could be doing something else, whereas now I have to take them out. So
it makes a big difference.
Yeah, huge difference.
That's lovely. And what would you say the future holds for Hannah Roper?
That's a fantastic
I know
question.
you mentioned really briefly earlier about there's something new brewing on the horizon.
So I've just launched, soft launch, the Coastal Country Music Group.
Ooh.
Because for starters, I have so many people come to me and say, I really want a country band for this event, or do you know so and so, because I want to book them
so
for
a bit like
car.
a management.
A bit like a booking agency.
Yeah.
What that then turns into, I don't know, but I figured it was something. And there's always a real conflict for me about monetising things. Now, of course, I make a living, or part of making a living, through helping others monetise their passion. You'd think I'd be more into doing that myself. I get reluctant because I want to be authentic. I don't want to take advantage of people. However, if I can earn an income from doing some of these things, it actually pays for me doing the organisation, the admin, building the websites, all of that sort of thing. So I figured there's a gap. I've been known as, you know, the country music person of the South. I've got so many connections.
So it's almost like a no-brainer.
It's a no-brainer. I've got the connections there. It's just about formalising that. But the other thing that I've been really passionate about since hosting the radio show and also doing Country on the Coast is helping country music artists run their music career as a business and look at diversifying their income streams, but more importantly, building a brand that makes them stand out from others. Cool.
So it's almost like the country music version of the female creative, right? That's so logical. What a smart pivot.
Yes, so as a result, I've really simplified my services for the female creatives. There's only one way to work with me one-to-one now. I will continue doing the brunches because they make my heart sing. I've been doing a lot more public speaking, a lot more things that don't necessarily earn an income, but it's because that's where I want to have an impact. And I want
it's part of your overall brand.
It's part of my overall brand and kind of giving and things like that. So I'm pivoting. There's going to be bits there still already, but I've made peace. The country music world was something that I associated with Lily Garland and associated with that period and that chapter in my life. What I've now made peace with is the country music's never going to go anywhere. It is a part of me, it is a part of my identity, it's a part of, I think because it was so tied up in Lily Garland, I felt I couldn't do it as Hannah. Whereas now running Country on the Coast, doing the radio show, meeting all of these incredible people, I realised that actually country music is not Lily Garland, country music is me, and I can embrace that and I can be part of that. It's all I listen to, kind of music.
Were your parents avid country music fans?
Not so, there were moments of real old school country, but my parents' music taste was so eclectic. So eclectic, and I thank them for that because I've learned, and when I studied music, I studied every single genre I've pulled. I don't listen to music and just listen. I hear the chord progression, I hear the instrumentation, I hear the melodic hooks, I hear the variations on the theme. So, but with country music, that again has holds a special memory in that my mum discovered she had a sister who had been taken to America after the war
Wow.
and had grown up in America, and she then had a family, and we got to know them, and they live in Austin, in Texas. She lived in Dallas. Texas has a huge country music scene, and she introduced me to what they were the Dixie Chicks, but are now the Chicks, when I was 18 years old, and we saw them in concert, and that was like a moment
What a
for me.
story.
Yeah, it was.
Your mum had a sister who was sent to America after or during the war.
Yeah.
And then you became reconnected.
Yeah.
And
Met her
your
family.
auntie helped you find.
Well, her daughter, so my cousin,
Wow.
took us to the Chicks concert, and sadly my cousin passed away through cancer. So I have this special memory and
connection with her,
connection.
regardless of where she is. Yeah.
And growing up with musical theatre, my mum was in shows, I've been in shows. Country music to me is the closest real life storytelling that you can get to musical theatre.
Yeah.
So musical theatre, you're playing a part, you're doing a character. Country music, the real life version.
There definitely is a beginning, a middle, and an end
Yeah.
to country music songs, right?
Yes.
And that's definitely one of the beautiful things. My husband's, he definitely, again, eclectic music. He loves all different genres, and country is one of the ones that him and Charlie have dipped their toes in a lot recently. And I think that it's become more mainstream over the last sort of like 5 to 10 years, which is great.
I think so. And there's a lot of crossover. You get country pop, country rock, country rap. There's, and that's what to me is so beautiful. You've got people that are your classic diehard country fans that are not necessarily on board with this modern movement of country music. Now, obviously, we all know that Beyonce did her country music album. I have my own thoughts. That's a whole other podcast episode.
You let me down, B. You let me down.
But there are so many. It's there's like Post Malone is just about to release his full country album. Jelly Roll, who is winning awards left, right and centre, has come from that kind of rap, that different kind of culture of music. So to me, country music has this really special pull. And you ask my husband, he's like, yeah, it's all trucks and beer and your sister's mama and all of this. And yeah, there's that fun element to it, but that's
what makes it more beautiful though, right?
If you listen to the lyrics, there's a story behind it, and there is a country music song for every chapter, for every moment that you will go through in your life.
100%. Totally agree. So check out. When is it that you're on Express FM?
Every Wednesday between 7 and 9.
Every Wednesday between 7 and 9 on Express FM.
Yes.
Do check out Lily Garland on Spotify, because if you can't find some kind of connection with at least one of the songs, then I'm not sure you should even be watching the podcast. And Female Creative, obviously, event coming up in October.
Yes, the brunch coming up on October, and I'm just about to move, because why not, creating content on Substack.
Okay.
So I've just launched a brand new Substack platform to share not just the educational side, but I'm getting more vulnerable and sharing more of what it's like to be me and to juggle and living with all the things that I live with.
That's incredible. That's
so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, we'll see. Well, we'll get her back in 6 months. And Country on the Coast, when is that? Is that going to be in April next year?
Yeah, next April. The dates haven't officially been launched yet at the time of recording, but possibly by the time it goes out. But it's the 12th and 13th of April next year.
Okay, and you can check out all of those brands on Instagram, Facebook, all of that fun stuff.
Google them.
And thank you for coming in, Hannah.
Thanks
and
for
thanks for
having
coming
me.
in, repping the brand.
Right, the new line, loving it.
Like rebellious.co.uk, you can go there too. Thank you.
No, thank you.
Such a legend.